Brought to you by Infineon. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Chouar, and today is Friday, January 16th, 2026, and I've got the excellent Christian DeLooper here with me, all the way from next door from San Francisco, Santa Cruz.
Hey, Miriam, how's it going? Good to see you.
All right, good. Listen, I had some interesting tech that I saw at CES, in addition to all the stuff I've already discussed on the show last week, and to the stuff I've written up for Tech Radar. I just have a story coming up. If a link gets published before the podcast gets out, you'll see it in the show notes. But I did an automotive recap.
Oh, cool.
But in addition to that, I spent some time with our sponsor, Infineon, discussing some of their technology with some interviews. So I'm going to roll this now, and then Christian and I will be back with the news and some phone stuff. So stay tuned for that. We're here at CES 2026 at the Infineon Suite with Chevron talking about Wi-Fi 7. Specifically, the Wi-Fi Alliance just made an announcement that they were allowing 20 megahertz support for Wi-Fi 7 devices. So you have a solution for that. And I want you to tell us what that brings to the table for the products that my audience is going to be using in the future.
Yeah. So it's actually super cool that the Wi-Fi Alliance did this. Just for some context, people have heard of Wi-Fi 7 for about 2 years now. But devices that require a lot of data rate, like things like laptops and smartphones and so on, they could be certified as Wi-Fi 7 devices.
That's a done deal.
That's a done deal.
We're all there.
So until this announcement from Wi-Fi Alliance happened, the benefits of Wi-Fi 7 could not be brought to IoT devices.
So you're talking doorbells, smart
door
vacuums,
locks, smart cameras,
earbuds that have Wi-Fi or whatever.
Sure, garage door openers, your robotic vacuum cleaners, appliances in a house, smoke detectors, all these types of devices that we commonly use on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
The benefits of Wi-Fi 7 couldn't be brought to those until this announcement from the Wi-Fi Alliance that you were referencing earlier.
Absolutely.
And we now have a product. We are super excited to be bringing out this product, which we call the ACW741X. That does exactly that. It brings the benefits of Wi-Fi 7 to the world of IoT.
So in a kind of a higher perspective view, what are those benefits? And then let's dig into some tech and show us practically here with the setup what the benefits are.
So before we talk about the benefits, let's talk about the problem, right?
Yeah,
what is the solving? Now, if you look at the number of devices in a home, like pre-pandemic, you used to have 10 or 15 Wi-Fi connected devices in a home. That number has been growing a lot since the pandemic. Yes, I have about 48 in my house, and I'm probably one of the lead adopters. But most American homes today have about 30 to 35 devices. And that number is growing. And we project that by end of the decade, there'll be over 50 connected devices in an average home. And the problem is not just that you have 50 devices. The neighbor on the one side has got 50 devices. The neighbor on the other side's got 50 devices too.
And now I live in a high-rise in Vancouver, Canada. So that means that I have all my neighbors' interference, and they might not have Wi-Fi 7. So, it's a mess. Right?
Exactly.
And you got 2.4, you got 5, you got 6 as well. If they have 6E in their homes and neighbors, right, they don't have 7. But I have 7. So what's the benefit for me now?
So when you have a device that's, if it's, let's say, dual band capable, it can operate in 2.5 and 5 gigahertz. With Wi-Fi 6, while you can use both bands, you can use only one at a time. So when you make a connection, you have to pick which band you're going to connect.
And you have to reconnect if there's interference or something.
Exactly. If you don't like that band, you have to disconnect, you have to reconnect.
Full handshake and all the time it takes to do that.
It takes anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, sometimes even more than that. Now, that's the problem that Wi-Fi 7 for IoT solves. So what you can do with this is you can make multiple connections at the same time. So you can connect in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz while you make the connection, and dynamically switch whichever band you like.
Cool. So you have a demo for us that actually shows that.
Yes,
and shows the improvements in latency around that. Right.
So let me set this up for you. I've got 3 devices here. There's a Wi-Fi 6 device. It's a Wi-Fi 7 device, which is built with the chip we just announced, ACW741X. And we have a device here which emulates interference. The 50 devices, the 100 devices we talked about, this kind of creates traffic to emulate that interference.
This is FCC's worst friend right now.
Exactly, yeah. So these 2 devices are now connected to a Wi-Fi 7 access point. And what you're seeing here on the chart here is a latency of a packet that's going on the network. So the y-axis is the latency, X-axis is the passage of time. Now, both these devices, as you can see, are connected in 2.4 gigahertz now. Everything's looking good so far. There's some latency spikes. That's because there are other Wi-Fi devices in the vicinity here, and therefore you're seeing these little spikes here. But now let's create some interference in this band. So let's start with 2.4 gigahertz, and we create some interference. So this device will produce a lot of data. Now, when that happens, notice what happened to the Wi-Fi 6 device, right?
Yeah.
It lost connection.
It's trying to
reconnect, and so on. Whereas you look at the Wi-Fi 7 device, super cool. It noticed that
it switched.
The spike here, it noticed that there's a lot of latency. It jumped onto 5 gigahertz spectrum. Latency is still pretty low.
Fantastic.
And that's the switching time. And look at that. It could switch in like under roughly half a millisecond. So imperceptible to the user.
If you're streaming from your doorbell right now, you won't even see a glitch.
You won't even see it.
And that's kind of
whereas the Wi-Fi 6
right?
device finally, after, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 seconds there, reconnected, and it's still struggling because there's still a lot of
quite a bit of time.
interference and the latency is going up and down, whereas the Wi-Fi 7 device, smooth, right? Now,
very nice.
now let's flip this around and try if it works the other way, right? So let's now inject some interference in the 5 gigahertz band. Okay, let's see what that does here. Okay, there was a little spike. So the Wi-Fi 7 device detected that these two spikes here. It detected that the spectrum is crowded, and it switched over to 2.4. And once again, the switching time half a millisecond. Right. So there's still a little traffic here. You can see little spikes because of that. But look at the Wi-Fi 6 device.
Wow,
still struggling. Wildly
it took a while, and it's starting to level out.
It's starting to level out, but it took a while for it to get there.
The Wi-Fi
7 was very quick and easy. So that's the benefit of bringing Wi-Fi 7 to the Wi-Fi.
So now, obviously, I see the benefits. Like, with IoT devices, like the kind of the home device that we're talking about, the price is really critical, right? So obviously, Infineon is a solution provider for OEMs to make great products. Price is pretty critical. So I presume that this solution is available at a pretty reasonable price point, correct?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's because Wi-Fi 7, the perception about Wi-Fi 7 is it's expensive. Right, it's a luxury thing, and that was true because there are ways in which you implement Wi-Fi 7 which are more for the high performance devices, where the chips become much more complex because they're operating in 2 bands concurrently at the same time.
Yeah.
So that is like using link 1 and link 2 at the same time.
And we're not doing that here.
We're not doing that here. Right. We have the capability of operating in either link, and we just switch between the 2 links.
Right.
So this is a way of implementing Wi-Fi 7 without adding cost to the end system, so that IoT devices can afford
the same cost as a Wi-Fi 6 device, right?
Practically. At the system level, it's practically the same cost because it's got the same dual band antenna, the same BOM, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Well, listen, that was fantastic. Appreciate you sharing that info with us.
Thank you.
I think it's going to make everybody's vacuum robots better, which we all want. We want the robots to be happy, right?
Exactly.
So there you go. And now I'm here with Gary at the Infineon suite, and we're going to talk about some new tech. It involves coffee makers.
Yeah.
I'm a big coffee fan, so this is exciting.
I'm a big coffee fan as well.
All right, so Gary, tell us what you're showing here.
Let's take a look. So this is a coffee machine that's demonstrating one of our MCUs, which is our PSOC 4000T, which has multi-sense capability. It can also, not only can it do capacitive sensing, but it can also do inductive sensing.
Fantastic.
And so the inductive sensing is used for like the metallic buttons here. So being able to sense the metallic deflection to be able to recognize button pushes. And that's for like very sleek, waterproof type designs where you can seal it all off. Okay.
So did you adapt a commercial product to this?
We adapted a commercial product to
because I'm
demonstrate this
quite familiar with
capability.
PSOC. So I also see you have some sort of capacitive strip device.
Yeah, so inside in here as well is this capacitive strip that we have for liquid level sensing.
Ah, okay.
And so you can see it's showing the liquid level here on the screen here. And so because you can't really see inside the machine, we have this demonstrator here to show this. So this strip is inside the machine, and you can see over here there's a sensor showing the level of the liquid, and as I raise the level of the liquid up, you can see it goes up over there on the screen.
Yeah.
Right?
That's wow. Let me do it.
Yeah.
Real quick. I want to try this. You ready? Ooh, look at that. All the way.
And so it's air gapped as well, so it never has to touch the water.
That's really cool,
but it's able to actually use it. Yeah.
I like that you have it air gapped because that way there's no maintenance, right?
Correct. That's right. You don't have to deal with like a floating bob or anything like that.
So
that has mechanical issues.
This isn't really new, right? What's new here specifically for CES?
So for CES, we've actually this 4000T device actually is one of our first devices that combine both of these technologies together.
Okay.
So we've always had CapSense. We've had that for a long time.
I know, because I remember seeing that like through the wood as well. Like you guys did the demos, I think 2 years ago.
We've had, we've been a leader in capacitive touch technology for over 20 years. Okay, so and so we've combined those two capabilities in one single device with the PSOC 4000T.
Okay, and then obviously, my audience is very consumer focused, so coffee makers. Pretty good example.
Yeah, that's a good example.
But can you think of other, like we've seen some smart water bottles that measure how much you drink? Do you think this is an application?
Absolutely. We've actually done that before. We've actually been in some smart water bottles that measure how much liquid you're consuming. Yeah.
And then what other applications do you think could be helpful? Like I suppose that in more industrial applications, being able to measure another liquid through a surface would also apply. Yeah, right? Is it just water? Or
it can be done with other fluids as well, so like oil or other things as well.
Okay.
We also have the ability to measure foam in addition to the liquid. Yeah, so if it's a foamy or soapy liquid, we can measure the foam level really as well as the actual liquid level.
So can it kind of distinguish like the meniscus between like the how the foam kind of has like the liquid, then there's just a little bit of a gooey meniscus thing, and then the foam on top.
That's right.
Can it distinguish those three levels?
That's correct.
Wow. Okay, so that's really cool, right? And then, of course, all the capacitive touch sensitive button stuff.
And again, this device can support all the capacitive touch as well.
Oh, okay, it does that
And so, whether it's like maybe smart glasses where you're controlling it with capacitive touch, that's another example of where our devices are used today.
Now, another thing that's critical for consumer applications is price point, right? So PSOC is a pretty attainable kind of product, right?
It's very affordable. That's how we can do multiple, in high volume, like, as I mentioned, smart glasses is an application.
Oh, okay.
So we can do...
Are you thinking like the temple control?
Yeah, the temple control where you can slide to control like volume or different features.
Okay.
That's one of our top applications that we service today as well.
Well, listen, Gary, thanks so much for the demo.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. From one coffee lover to another.
Right.
Expect your coffee maker to improve drastically soon with this technology. And I'm back here at the Infineon suite with Harry. Nice to meet you, Harry.
Nice to meet you.
You have a demo for us using a robot head. But there's something special about this robot head, right? You've got 60 gigahertz radar that you're helping, one of Infineon's latest sensors.
Yes.
Tell us about what you're doing here and what some of the applications would be in a kind of home environment or, consumer setting.
Definitely. So the radar sensor, it has on-chip detection built in. Yeah. So you are able to get presence information and motion detection by default from the sensor without the use of external computation. So you get like presence or absence information at a very low power basis. This is extremely useful for situations like security cameras, thermostats, even like robotic vacuums, anything where
vacuums, of course.
Anything where you want to map the surroundings, understand if there is presence of people there, if somebody is entering or leaving the room, or even identify which area of the room there is occupancy, so that you can sort of take the next action based on it. Right. So it serves as like the information point of gathering environmental data.
So the big revolution of 60 gigahertz radar lately has been, it's come down in price and complexity significantly. Infineon's been a big contributor to that.
Yeah.
So, do you think this particular sensor in this particular is something we could see today in some consumer products or very soon?
Yeah, definitely. 60 gigahertz radar has come a long way, and even the latest generation of Infineon's 60 gigahertz radar, like I said, it has a technological advantage as well, where we've moved on completely to CMOS. So this brings in like a good trade-off between performance, cost, and also the ability to do on-chip detection.
Yeah.
So this makes it very compelling to replace existing solutions and make it really low power and effective in terms of what you want to get out of it.
Great. So in this particular demo, you're going to show us a little bit. There is, the robot, because of its three sensors, I believe, is aware of the two of us being here.
Yeah.
And it can now use a time of flight sensor, to kind of rotate towards me. But it's if I'm closer, it's going to track me, and if you're closer, I'm going to move away right now.
Yeah.
And see if it actually tracks you.
Yeah.
There we are.
So basically
awesome.
The tracking is enabled by like the radar that is on the top, and obviously the time of flight gives you like the depth information and also the black and white
so
amplitude.
Let's swap sides now.
Yeah,
You're going to
sure.
walk away a little bit, and I'm going to walk this way. And it's tracking me now. Yeah, okay. And if I move, it's going to track me, hopefully. Say hello, 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 hello. And now if you go over there, it should track you.
Yeah.
Yep. We're swapped sides. Okay, so it's working as advertised. But I think the thing that's really interesting to me on the map here is this, like, it really knows everything that's around it at any time.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of cool to see the regular camera and then the infrared and the depth projector doing this job here. So, like, if I get really close, you should be able to see my hand right there.
Exactly.
Yep. And then if I get further away, I get redder and redder, and you're closer to your green. Yeah, it's very cool. So, I thought you gave us a good example with doorbells, because, you don't want the doorbell to be always on, right? Like video is kind of time. So, from a power consumption perspective, is 60 gigahertz radar less expensive than a regular camera that you'd find on the doorbell?
Yeah, definitely. If you're operating the camera all the time, it drains the battery quite a bit. Whereas if you have like very simple sensors like the PIR sensors, it turns on very frequently, so you get a lot of false positives. So this ultra low power mode of radar gives you like the perfect balance between the two. You have a reliable solution, but it's also lower power in the long term.
And then I guess another application is in cars too, right? Like, I mean, I know it's used for passenger detection and backseat and for airbag detection now to decide how big the person is, stuff. But do you see a future? A lot of cars now have 360 recording for security, right? So do you think that also something can run all the time? Because you're like 6 or 8 cameras are running all the time. You're draining the EV's battery while it's parked. Do you see an application for that as well?
Definitely. Automotive radar is a completely different market. There's a lot of other solutions available for automotive radar as well. But I would say that not only within the cabin, but also exterior, like you mentioned.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like to augment the radars for ADAS is one thing. But I'm thinking if it gets cheap enough, you could just add those just for surveillance purposes, right?
Definitely,
Okay, cool. That's another possibility. Anything else you can think of that might be applicable?
Yeah, no, I think we covered most of the key applications, but I think within the consumer realm, I would say that 60 gigahertz radar is becoming more and more compelling because of these reasons.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Harry.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Sure.
Folks, we have seen a bunch of really cool stuff today at Infineon, and I think CS 2026 has been all about robots and physical AI, as you know, but I think it's becoming real. I think that a lot of the technology we saw here are going to make it much more viable for your products, your tech in your home to actually work properly and not annoy you as much as it might do right now by running out of battery or not connecting to Wi-Fi properly. Because we all know that. You talk to your smart speaker and suddenly it's not connected. You're like, I need a timer. I need it now. So, I think this is what Infineon helps with. And I'm always excited to see the kind of stuff that they're working on that's going to end up in products we see here at CES this year and next. All right. So, Christian, you have a new phone and I have a new phone. And this is kind of podcasts I like where we can review phones. But I want to talk about something more like wow before that. Like, I think the biggest news of the week in terms of the Western world, in terms of smartphones, and it's that Apple Google Gemini announcement. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's kind of a long time coming, maybe two years coming. We've seen Apple kind of flailing around with AI for a couple of years now. Not much has come of it. A lot of rumors of executives leaving and coming, and different pivots inside the company. Who knows what's what. But I've been playing around with Gemini. I've been playing around with all the AI stuff since it started coming out a couple of years ago, and the Gemini 3 Pro or Gemini 3, whatever, is great. It's awesome. It's the best one, in my opinion.
I agree.
It gives good answers. It's helpful. It's, great. So I think this is great news for everyone involved. I think it's likely to make Siri a whole lot better. And hopefully help make good on those plans to make an AI version of Siri that we're all waiting for.
Look, I think it's great. I mean, I'm biased because, like you, I'm a super big fan of Gemini. It's really a game changer. I don't use ChatGPT almost at all. Like, I don't understand the people who do, really, frankly. There's no need. If you're, like me, an Android user, you're an iPhone user too. So it's even crazier for you. Like, you're really invested in this. This announcement. Already in deep, like knee deep, neck deep, I don't know at this point, in Gemini. And I have the Pro, whatever, because I got a free access to it through Google PR. Thank you guys. So the Pixel phones that they send me. But look, I'm a Pixel user anyway. So it's not like, for me, I've seen the light. And, like one of the stories I wrote, little blurbs that I wrote on my Tech Radar story about automotive, was an announcement that BMW is going to integrate Alexa Plus, their LLM, their AI, not just the voice assistant, but the whole like smarts into the BMW cars. And I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I have no context or information stored there. I barely use Alexa device. The only thing that I have that is kind of Alexa related in my home are my Ring cameras, which are legacy cameras that I've had forever. And so like, why do I care about that? And I told them that. I'm like, no, I want Gemini. You need to give your customer a choice like you do with Android Auto and CarPlay.
Right.
You need to give them whatever they want. Like having a single LLM, whatever, AI, no. And so, so I'm biased there because like I'm Apple and Gemini, perfect marriage for me, right? As a Mac user, not a big phone user, but like iPhone. But I think that I'm very excited about that because I think that I've seen the results. I've seen what it can do. And more importantly, now when I use my Mac or occasionally when I use my iPhone, I will get context that'll follow me because I'll just log into my Google account. Yay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work because we know that it's not going to be quite the same as what we're expecting, right? Like this is Apple taking the models, LLMs, and putting them into their phone.
So they announced, they had like a joint statement that they released, which didn't have a whole lot of details, but the reports suggest that it's going to be kind of like a white label thing, and that Apple will be able to fine tune Gemini, which means they'll kind of be able to adjust the weights of the models and make it a bit more Apple like, I guess. So, who knows what the end result will be, how different it will be from Gemini, if it will be different from Gemini. But, Gemini, in my opinion, is a great base for what they're working on. And yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I hope they give us access to our like existing Gemini context, like somehow, because that if we don't get that, then it's starting from scratch for me again. And I don't want that.
I think there's a 0% chance that it will plug into your Gemini context, but
it could
who
be
knows?
Interesting. Well, you never know because that's the thing. Google has apps for iPhone, right? And it's possible that when you install Gemini on your iPhone, it somehow like melds it together somehow. I don't know.
Who knows? Possible. Yeah.
But even if I have to start from scratch on context and, knowledge, I still think it's I've seen what it can do, and I think that's going to be a super big benefit to anyone who's purely into Apple's ecosystem right now and is, pining for a better Siri and Apple Intelligence experience. You can only win here.
Yeah, and as far as the context goes, like you said, I don't really use ChatGPT much anymore either. But I had a subscription until like 2 months ago. And I thought I would miss, it having access to the chat history that we've had and all that kind of stuff, our relationship. But that really wasn't the case. Starting from scratch with Gemini, which is what I didn't notice any friction really. And I think the friction will come from the integration with like smart home devices and that kind of thing, which is what Gemini is great at because Google's got your entire digital life stored in it. But as far as starting from scratch goes, I think most people 90% of the time are using these models to like find things out and like search the web in an advanced way rather than necessarily control devices or, access personal information. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But
yeah, I think for me, the difference, that's a good point. The difference is that I think when I say context, I don't just mean my chats. I'm talking about the fact that it has access to my calendar and my photos. Yeah. Like it's Google, right? Like it's not just, I have everything. And it's nice to be able to talk to my assistant and say, hey, like, do you remember what I did? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that is like, it knows. And because I've been using Google for like like putting all my stuff. I know it's scary because like I sometimes worry about the stories I've heard of people losing their Gmail account because of some automated,
Right.
I have so much, it would delete a big chunk of my life literally at this point.
Yeah.
And so, for me, that's kind of also what I mean by context. It's like I want access to that stuff because it makes my life easier. Part of the concept of an assistant is that it knows you and it knows what to do for you. Now, I don't use Google to log into things. Like, how people use Apple's ID to authenticate with other services and Google's ID or Facebook ID to log. I don't do that. I've always kept that separate and use a separate email. But because I'm old school that way, but I think that there are some things I don't use in the entire Google universe, but I use so much of it right now and I've given Gemini access to so much of it that, I had to try it because it's part of my kind of, pixel experience as a reviewer was like, let's get that thing where, I get a text from someone and it says, do you want to do X? And then the agent says, oh, hey, by the way, this is relating to X, Y, Z you did in your calendar 2 weeks ago. That's stuff I needed to experience. So as soon as I turned it on, I was like, I hit I hovered above the button for a little while. I'm like, do I really want to give Gemini access to all this stuff? I mean, but then I was like, Google already does.
Google already knows.
Does. So
it's all the same.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I'm curious, like how the context thing will pan out because, like, at least OpenAI and the major AI focused companies, their vision is that the AI is the next OS, which means that it's going to have to plug into all of these different services in different ways. And you're going to have to be able to access your Google data in ChatGPT, at some point. You might be able to already. I don't know. But
yeah,
in terms of like accessing that context on the Siri branded version of Gemini, like hopefully there'll be connectors like that will allow you to do that. Knowing Apple, maybe it will just be like you can access your files stored on your iPhone or your Mac or that kind of thing. But hopefully we'll have more connectors to be able to, access my Google Docs from Siri advanced AI version or, we'll see.
Yeah. But I mean, like, for example, what I'm trying to say is that Gemini doesn't know anything about my Airbnb or my United account. I mean, it does know some stuff from my United because it gets the Gmails, right? So it has some context there. And that's what I'm willing to give it. I'm not going to give Gemini a login to my United, for example. I draw the line there. So some things that are more advanced, like I'm never going to ask Gemini to book a flight for me. Sorry, that I don't trust AI with that just yet.
I'm glad we have this recorded.
And maybe when I do, yeah. So we'll see. But like, I'm just saying about anything that Gemini or Google has access to through my Gmail, through my calendar, that stuff is, in photos has been pretty invaluable because I'm already using these services anyway. So like, I don't have to worry about, giving my login for Airbnb. It already knows I'm going to go to whatever it is and spend so many days there. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on to this Honor phone that you've got that I don't have that, several people have shown me. I've played with it. It's been in people's hands and reviewers' hands for a while. It was, out in China for a while. But I guess the embargo lifted for the West or something because my guest last week, Matteo Doni, had one in his pocket, showed it during our CES podcast. But you reviewed it, and I want to hear your thoughts as a kind of a iPhone and phone reviewers
as an iPhone user.
I think you are, but it actually does make sense because I'd be curious to see, because my biggest issue with Honor is the software. And I think you're already agreeing with me, but I think that you're not a pure Android user like I am. Like I'm like Pixel. I'm like really hardcore about what my expectation of an Android experience are. You might be more flexible than me because you review more phones, but you're daily an iPhone. So I was kind of curious about your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, I daily an iPhone, except when I'm reviewing an Android phone. I think the story of the Magic 8 Pro is the same Honor story that we've been telling for months. The hardware is so good. The screen is beautiful. The cameras are incredible. Everything about it. There's nothing that I dislike about the hardware. The battery is great, charges fast, etc. It's powerful, whatever. It's the software again, as usual, which Honor, I think, knows that in the West, we have issues with how its software works. It feels a little dated. It looks little weird. I did notice that they've scaled back on some of the bloatware. There's not as much like third-party extra apps as there has been in the past. There's still all the Honor duplicates of apps that you already have access to. Google versions like, Honor Docs and et cetera, which we don't really use. And I don't know how many people are using Honor Docs to store all their documents. But regardless, that's a good step in the right direction, is less of that extra stuff that you don't want. But there's still a lot of it. The OS still feels a bit old school, even though they've been, putting all the AI things in that they can figure out, just like everyone. It's the same thing that we've been saying for years.
So you reviewed the Pro specifically, right? And because there's a whole bunch of Honor 8 series. In fact, we're going to talk in the news later about an upcoming one too, an Air one, thin one, I guess. But what's the camera experience like? Because I don't have much context. The last Honor flagship I had, like non-folding, was the Honor Magic 5. And, this is now 4 years ago. And it was great. Same thing, same story. The hardware was solid. But I'm hearing some superlative things from folks on the camera, especially the telephoto in low light. And, my context, my experience, my baseline is things like Oppo Find X9 Pro, which is my last, darling camera phone I've used. There's others who I don't have it, but others have raved about the Vivo X300 Pro as well. So, if you've used any of these phones, how does it kind of line up with that? I
haven't used too many of them, but I will say that the camera on the Magic 8 Pro is so good. The telephoto camera in particular is like standout good, even in low light. It's got the 200 megapixel sensor for the telephoto camera, which is great. The native zoom is only 3.7x, which is, whatever. But it's great. It's colorful. It's not like super neutral in terms of colors, but that's fine. I mean, we expect that.
Do you want to show off the phone for our Patreons?
I've got it right here.
Get a little close to the camera if it lets you focus.
Classic, like big camera module on the back, which turns out, it paid off.
It's interesting because, as I said, those two phones I mentioned, the Vivo and the Oppo, are basically the same spec-wise, like very similar. 200 megapixel telephoto at 3-something-x. I think you have to understand, and I think that's also why Apple went down to 4x on the 17 Pro Max, M17 Pro this year, is, that 5x jump they used to make, and that Pixel still makes, is problematic because you get a lot of loss in that 3x, 4x area, where, a lot of people like to take portraits at that level. So I think this is having either, like Oppo did for a while, 2 50 megapixel telephotos, one that's 3x and one that's 6x. They did that for a while.
Yeah.
Or having a really, really large 200 megapixel that is at 3-point-something-x actually makes a lot of sense, because you can use AI for a lot of that, zooming into the max kind of stuff. And it does a good job. I'm sure that Honor has some kind of AI zoom that kind of uses generative AI to just interpolate data. That's what Oppo and Vivo do, and it's great. Like it looks superb. It depends on what you do. People and writing, not so much. But things like buildings, cars, pets, even animals, it does a pretty damn good job. So I'm curious how much of that is available on the Honor,
Yeah, I mean, there's all of that available on the Honor, just, the AI upscaling and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like having the 5x on the telephoto, and I think we'll be able to do that more, over the next few years as the companies work more on the kind of sensor cropping stuff that they've been doing, because that's been making a big difference for that kind of in-between area for the main cameras, is like the 3x, the 4x, they call the 2x optical quality, which is fine because it's just, a sensor crop that cuts out the rest of the actual pixels. But that makes a difference. And I've found that even on the, the previous, it was the 5x on the iPhone 16 Pro, the kind of 3 to 4x region was pretty good. And
it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that, it's hard also. There's another issue. I think it's also really hard to do a 200 megapixel large sensor with optics that are thin. at 5x. Like I think that's also why they've gone down to like they're trying to go like as close to 4 as they can. I think 3.5 is on the Oppo. I don't know what the Vivo is. You said it's 3.75 or something on yours.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's great. I got some specs here for the specs hungry. Like this is a really nice phone. It's got Snapdragon 880 Gen 5. You talked about the display. It's a 1220p essentially, 1.5K display, LTPO of course, 120 hertz, Dolby Vision, all that. You get in addition to that 200 megapixel telephoto, which has all the goodies. You get 50 megapixel main. It's also f1.6, which is really great. You get a 50 megapixel ultra wide, 50 megapixel front facing camera. How's the selfies on that?
Yeah, they're great. They're good. Yeah.
All right. And of course, you get a massive battery and not as big in Europe. I don't know if you have the global one or the Chinese one, but
I have the global one.
Yeah, the global one. The Chinese one apparently has a 7100 milliamp hour battery. Well, actually interesting because it's Chinese it says here in the specs 7200 for China, 7100 global, and the European is 6270.
Yeah.
And 100 watt wired for the global for charging, 120 watt wired for the rest of the world, and I guess 80 watt wireless, which is insane. Wow. I suppose you need Honor's charger for that though.
Yeah, you need Honor's charger for that, or Honor or Huawei like supercharge chargers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It has the triple like IP rating like the OnePlus phones have had. So it has the IP69K, et cetera, which is super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of phones are like that now, and I kind of dig it because it's like, okay, look, you're not going to purposely drop your phone in a lake, but you might accidentally. And
yeah,
it might
you might accidentally.
Might be able to be fished out. So
yeah,
any kind of solid water is, I don't know, like, remember, were you on that cruise with OnePlus?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The dishwasher test? Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it's good to know that if you really want to disinfect your phone, you could do that. I think there's probably a limited number of times you can do that, though.
Yeah.
So, be careful for those of you out there with an awesome OnePlus 13, because the OnePlus 15, I have some issues. I've mentioned them many times now. My gist of that was, in case you didn't know, Christian, was that I felt that it wasn't as well balanced as the 13, like not as overall.
Well, that's true. The cameras weren't as good.
The battery is incredible. Battery life,
amazing.
But for me, it's like I'm not surprised. Half of the Chinese branded phones I've received that are global market phones this year, even affordable ones, are 7,000 milliamp hour. I'm used to that now. It's not that exciting to me, but it's a good thing for North America that we have one phone that has that kind of battery life. And I love the material, the build, that finish, sandstorm, but the camera downgrade and some of the software changes, the lack of slider for the alert, which, I know they've gone to the iPhone way of doing things, and Oppo started that way before that, even with the Find X8 Ultra and stuff. Like, some of these things, bother me. And it's in the performance focus. Like, I don't care about that. Like, it's a flagship. It's not a gaming phone. I want a balanced experience. And that is why I keep telling people, if you can pick up a 13 right now, pick up the 13, because with all the software updates, it's damn close. Now, the battery life's not going to be as good, right? Yeah,
the Honor has that kind of customizable button too. It's designed for AI stuff, which most people, I think, will maybe want to change it. But ironically, the ones that we've seen on Android so far are not as good or as customizable as the action button on the iPhone because of Siri shortcuts. And it's like, Google needs that. We need a Siri shortcuts for Android that's first party and that has like deep integration and developer support. Like, that is the iPhone's superpower. If you don't use shortcuts that much and you have an iPhone, it's great. And that's what makes the action button so good. But the Android ones, like, you can sometimes, like, most of them, you can't even set a custom like app to open. You can't even choose an app to open. Maybe you can open the camera. Maybe you can do like some AI stuff, but
this is a good. Yeah, no, this is a good point. I think hopefully there's somebody from Google listening right now going, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time, because I think that, in the same way as Apple copies a lot of Android features much later on, like especially on the hardware front, I think it's true that Apple innovates on the software front, unless it's AI.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that is a really good example. But I think a lot of that came from Automator on the Mac, right?
Yeah.
Like shortcuts are, it's kind of spawned off of that, and you don't even see that really on the PC world. Like now, you need to install in Windows, you need to install some kind of custom third-party scripting app.
Yeah, I think shortcuts came from an acquisition that they made of an iPhone app that had similar features.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I love that thing, but I don't know. It's been ages since it's been out, so we'll see if Google does end up copying it. But I think getting the developer support will be a tricky one for Google.
Right on. Yeah. Well, thanks for a heads up. I didn't quite see when you held it up. Is that a flat screen with slab size, or is it slightly rounded on the edges?
Slightly. Well, the bezels are slightly rounded-ish.
So it's like 2.5-ish, 2.5D-ish.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Cool. Looks nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for your insights on this phone that I didn't get and that my audience is interested about. I'm going to talk to you guys about a phone that I have, which a mid-range phone. It's about $450. So, kind of like to frame things. It's this guy here, the Realme 16 Pro Plus. And so the thing about this phone is, people are like, what's the big deal? It's a camera-centric mid-ranger. So it has the same kind of camera goodness that you find on those phones we just discussed, like the Oppo flagship, the Vivo flagship, the Honor flagship, but at $450. So you're going to say, well, what does it cut, corner-wise to get to that point? Well, what it does cut is a plastic frame, Snapdragon 7 Gen 4. You're not getting a flagship chip, right? You don't get wireless charging, right? But here's the other things you do get. You get a nice display. It's 144 hertz. I believe it's 1.5K, but it's LTPS. So it's not LTPO. So it doesn't refresh down to 1 hertz. But honestly, that's not a big deal because this is going to be a very power efficient, phone. You got a 7 Gen 4 and a 7,000 milliamp hour battery. So yeah, and as you can see, this camera system is pretty intense. It's got a 200 megapixel main sensor. It has a 50 megapixel 3x telephoto. Both of these have autofocus and OIS and the whole shebang, and it does AI zoom, so up to 120. You probably don't want to go much further than 30, but even at 30, it's solid.
Yeah.
So it plays with the flagships in terms of camera. It has you lose a little bit in the ultra wide department with an 8 megapixel, Mm-hmm. But it does have autofocus on that ultra wide, meaning you can do macro photography. So pretty great stuff. I think they did a good job for the price. Also, you have fast charging because this is, remember Realme is essentially Oppo. So you get Super VOOC here. You get 80 watt wired. And you do get 55 watt PPS PD. So if you have a normal charge, you're still charging at a pretty decent clip. Like a 65 watt, Dell laptop charger will charge this thing at like 55 watts, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Again, no wireless charging. Software is pretty much the same as Color OS. They call it Realme UI, but if you've used a OnePlus phone, Oxygen OS, it's the same deal here. I'll show you the app tray. It has that tab here on the side that is like copies the iPhone that we've seen on the OnePlus 15 and the latest Oppo phones. It's pretty thin too. It's only like 7 something millimeters. So 7,000 milliamp hour battery in a phone that's thin and light with great display, great cameras, mid-range specs. You get lots of RAM and storage options as usual.
But it seems like the mid-range spec is really just the chipset and everything else is kind of flagship.
Yeah, everything else is, you
except for the LTPS, but
LTPS, you get like it's little things that they cut here and there, like no wireless charging, and it has this suede back, which is it's kind of hard to describe. It's not like Alcantara, but it because it doesn't leave the marks, but it feels like you're touching suede, like maybe very soft leather. Like it's not vinyl, it's not vegan leather like what we're familiar with. It's very interesting because it's softer than vegan leather. It's almost has a felt feel to. I don't know. It's great. Like
I think they do actually call it vegan leather.
Yeah,
it looks nice. Yeah,
and look, it's got a camera bump that's not too pronounced either.
Yeah.
Like, if you
how's
can
the
see
like the camera specs are great. How's the like process? Like, how do the images look in the end?
Good. Yeah. Like, I mean, this is definitely using like the Oppo land non-Hasselblad. So think OnePlus. OnePlus 15, OnePlus 13, like roughly in terms of quality. I'd think it's closer to OnePlus 15 because, it has a bit of a downgrade in specs compared to the previous OnePlus 13, but it's in that range. The color science is slightly tweaked because it's more like Realme's color science. But, I think people will like it. It feels like a photography device in the sense that it's got that high contrast, photography style in the resulting photos. It's not trying to do the iPhone, Samsung Pixel thing of making everything even and perfect.
Right.
It gives you, it'll give you shadows in some shots. It'll give you it'll give you some mood, which is kind of, I think, what a lot of these Oppo, Vivo, and I think maybe Honor does it too. They're trying to approximate the use of a real camera. And there's different modes, like film modes, where you're like vibrant versus like, in the same way as like the Oppo has the Hasselblad modes. And it's very cool. Like if you're looking at saving money, and again, this is not available in the US, but like in India, in Europe, this is sold, like you could pick this up and really enjoy some great photography with it and good battery life that lasts you forever. So by the way, folks, you probably want, like those of you listening on audio, like, why are you talking about phones and showing phones? Well, guess what? There's a video version of this podcast that you can subscribe to on Patreon. So that is why I keep mentioning Patreon and showing stuff. Those of you on Patreon get this video a day in advance. Every week the show gets recorded and you get a day in advance and you get $5 a month. That's the deal. So if you want to support me, that's the way to do it. And the audio version, I don't cut anything out. Sometimes I do give my Patreons a bit extra because we go overtime, and sometimes there's bloopers in there because FedEx shows up in the middle of things and we unbox a phone or something real quick. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff you're missing as audio listeners. But, honestly, if you can support me on Patreon, I'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. So yes, Realme 16 Pro Plus. Now there's like the Honor Magic 5, there is a whole series of Realme 16 phones. This is kind of their mainstay mid-range phone. It has like a 16 Pro as well, which has not quite as good cameras, and a 16 regular, which is even cheaper. And then there's a 16, light or something. Anyway, like you get the idea. This is the best they make in that line. And I get it every year. It started, I think, with I want to say the Realme 9 or 10 series, where they were like, okay, why don't we make this to stand out from the rest of the crowd? Why don't we make this a camera-centric mid-ranger?
Right.
And I was like, no, you can't put OIS on a $350 phone. You can't put a periscope So every year they added things like, first they did OIS, then one year they did a 108, whenever they did those, remember? Then they did like a 200, then they did like periscope telephoto, then they did, it's just been crazy. And then now we've kind of settled, other than the ultra wide, we've settled on essentially making a flagship grade camera system. Yeah. So as an imaging nerd, I'm into it. And I always request it simply because I'm like, I can't do all the Realme phones. There's so many of them, but
there's a lot of Realme phones.
And choose the good ones. Yeah.
We
get some news items. Actually, before we do that, I think we get some other fun stuff. Pixel 10a has leaked. And as a Pixel aficionado, and the fact that a lot of my listeners are in North America and in the West, we're going to be getting this phone. It looks like we're going to be getting this phone next month, which is, oh my God, Christian, it's beginning. The marathon of 2026 has begun. I feel bad because right now I have a backlog of reviews I'm kind of finishing up, and I'm dreading adding stuff to it, and I'm hoping I can finish those before the stuff drops. And now I'm reading this and I'm like, I know Samsung's coming, and I'm like, oh no, don't give me a Pixel now.
Can
you
not
wait
those before
till
Samsung
April?
And Pixel starts up?
I know. So we're hearing rumors. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's come out. The pricing rumors, color rumors, spec rumors, and like timing rumors. And so what are your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
Yeah, it looks basically like the Pixel 9a Plus, which is perfect. Great. That's what I want. The Pixel 9a was awesome at a great price.
It was the antidote. I hate to say this because I really did love the iPhone 17 series, including the Air this year. I know the Air is very controversial, but I think there is something about that phone. You cannot dismiss that phone. But the 16e from Apple last year, oh my God, just completely out of touch. I felt Apple was just not like, especially when the Pixel 9a was coming out around the same time, like just a little after, for like just completely obliterating the reason of existence of the iPhone 16e. I felt like you're better off buying an iPhone 16 at that point, or even a 15 Pro refurbished or something than buying a 16e. And here comes the Pixel 9a, which is like, holy grail perfection almost for a $500 phone. And so, I think I'm excited.
I'm curious about, like, you know, we were just talking about the Realme phone, which is like flagship camera at $450 ish. You know, Google has the software advantage and the first party thing, and it's polished and all that kind of stuff. I'm curious, like, how long before we start getting that kind of thing on a Pixel series? Because, like, we saw the Pixel 10 has the triple camera for the first time. The base mainline Pixel series has a triple camera. The 9a had a pretty good camera, but, you know, there's definitely room for improvement compared to the flagship Pixel series. So I don't know, but regardless, I'm sure it's going to be a great phone, and I think a lot of that is going to come down to the software.
Yeah. So we're looking at mid-February now, about a month from now, to be specific. We're looking at the same price, or potentially a little less. Actually, the article I'll link here is Hot Hardware. They did a bit of I write for them. I do their phone reviews, and they did a bit of a kind of like a medley of all the rumors. But there since then have been more rumors that there actually might be a drop in price, which is kind of insane to me. I don't know how they can do that. But it also might be to me, it makes more sense that it would be a $50 premium because of the memory costs and the incredible inflation we've been experiencing in North America, especially in the US.
Yeah,
so
I think Google is maybe trying to, you know, get people on board the Pixel series. You know, show people the way a little bit. I think they'd be happy to eat the cost a little bit if it meant.
But if they do, and if this is almost a clone,
users.
because we know it's going to be Tensor G4 again, which is not a great chipset, but it's fine if you put a big enough battery in there. If they keep the camera is roughly the same, I think they could basically clone the Pixel 9a essentially with a few little improvements. Maybe they'll add pixel snaps. That would be freaking amazing,
that would be great.
Right?
Yeah.
Basically think about what they did with the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. You know, definitely not competitive in this day and age, but definitely took last year's 9 Pro Fold that we all loved because at the time it was competitive. And then they essentially added Pixel Snap MagSafe to it. And I think that would in itself would be good with more base storage, maybe, you know, just do that for $500. And you like my review is going to be, you know, a point or two last year's. It'll be easy.
Yeah. It's copy paste.
I mean, again, it's all about the software with Google too, right? So, you know, that you'll be able to buy the 9A for even cheaper at that point. I think, look, I'm on board. I hope they don't mess it up. It's kind of like my thing. It's like, I feel like these, especially for North America, those $500 phones from the big manufacturer, like the Samsung A series, the Pixel A series, the iPhone E series, they need to nail it. And Apple really needs to nail the 17E this year. If they can do that in the same way as they did the rest of the 17 line, you know, you're laughing. So what do you think?
You know,
do you think they'll do it?
I think that the 17E will probably be pretty similar to the 16E, and I think that that's just going to be fine because the point of it is that it's an iPhone with iOS for people who want iPhones, which a lot of people here in North America do, but at a lower cost. And, you know, maybe it'll push some people to buy like a refurbished or a used, you know, last year's Pro or whatever, but I think Apple is happy with that too. So
I think my only big issue with the 16E was it was too expensive. It was $100 too much. If it was just $100 less, I'm okay to live with that. Like, you know, look at the iPhone Air, single camera. You know, I get that. I get how Apple thinks. But
I had some issues with it too.
The price, I was like,
MagSafe.
wow, you're really asking. And I feel like maybe this year they can justify that price because of inflation, memory costs, as I said, and stuff. But like last year, it was just like, whoa, dude, seriously? Yeah. Like that's not, you know.
My biggest issue was no MagSafe, which I thought was
and that was
insane.
And so if you know, we'll see. But Pixel 10a, keep an ear out. Stay tuned to the podcast. I'll obviously be getting that from Google, so stay tuned for that. All right, we got a bunch of news items here. Some of it is a little follow-up-ish on previous news items. Just so you know, Christian, some of those phones like the OnePlus 15T and the Realme Power P4 Power and the Honor Power 2. All of these phones are phones we've discussed on the podcast before because they have something interesting and unique about them. And so these are kind of updates on what's going on with them. The first news we have is that there's an Oppo Find N6 coming to replace the Find N5, of course, which is in my pocket. I've been using it since last year. It's the Z Fold 7 equivalent in Oppo's world. It came out about a year ago before the Z Fold 7 at the same thickness as the Z Fold 7, as the same thickness as the Magic V5 eventually came out as well. The nice thing is that, unlike the Z Fold 7, it has a real telephoto, periscope, 50 megapixel, 3x, the whole 9 yards, kind of like this Magic 5 you just reviewed. And, it's not 200, but it's a solid telephoto with Hasselblad branding and color signs. It does have pin support. It does have a massive silicon carbon battery, all the things that the Z Fold 7, that's a darling of the press, it doesn't have. So that's why it's still in my pocket. So I'm looking forward to the N6, but that's going to be the follow-up to that. But the N7 is now supposed to arrive shortly thereafter in the summer as a passport format, like following the iPhone Fold, what we think the iPhone Fold is going to do, which is going back to the original Pixel, and in fact, going back to the original Oppo Find N2 and N, which were also that passport shape. So that's the news item. I think it's interesting. There's been other companies from China that have announced that they're going to be doing, including Samsung, right? Like there's rumors of Samsung making a wide Fold 8. What are your thoughts on this copycatting and or this form factor in general?
The form factor, I'm not sure about it. I'm open to being convinced that it's the best way. I remember the Pixel Fold was great before the Pixel 9 Pro Fold came out. And then I was like, this is the form factor that I want, or the, kind of aspect ratio that I want. And I think they've figured it out with the Z Fold series and the Pixel Fold and, so on. I'm open to being convinced, but I do like the taller display of the the foldables that we have here now. So I don't know.
I think it's good to have choice, and I think that I know what Apple's trying to do here, which I think I appreciate, is that you know how Apple's software is very constrained in its aspect ratios and resolution, and I don't want Apple to compromise this. One of the things I love about my Mac is that with a 5K display, I'm a Mac Mini right now here. I'm using the Samsung 5K display, but if you use a 4K display on your Mac, you're losing out because you're getting tons of crappy pixel interpolation. You're not getting essentially what Apple considers Retina.
Right.
But you get a 5K monitor from LG, from Apple if you want to spend the money, or from Samsung like I have, and you're getting Retina. You're getting the proper resolution scaling. So same thing happens with iPad and iPhone apps. And it's very critical that Apple make a display that will work with the apps. And so I'm a little confused about their front display, like the cover display on this iPhone Fold, because that's a completely different form factor. And maybe they're going to cut, we're going to get 2/3 of an iPhone app and they're going to make developers do that somehow. But the rest, width is going to be the same. Height's going to be shorter.
I'm not sure I agree. I mean, the whole point of iPadOS 26 is the, resizable windows. And they work well. They work really well.
Maybe it's not as much of an issue, the app constraint. But I'm thinking more about when you open it. When you open this iPhone Fold, and of course this Oppo Find N7 and this, Samsung Z Fold 8 wide, you're going to get a proper way of watching videos, which is the big lacking thing on the square form factor. So I think there is a use for that. So the question is, are you a productivity person that uses your phone one-handed more or equally as much as open? Or are you a content consumption person? Right. But I can see I can see Apple constraining the iPad, like the open experience to an iPad friendly form factor, and aspect ratio simply because for adoption, right? Maybe the developers don't have to do as much tweaking.
Maybe,
for content consumption.
So for the Find N7, is it going to be wider, do we think, or is it going to be just shorter? Because those are different things, right? Then the content consumption area isn't better necessarily. It's just the black bars are smaller.
We're not sure. What we know is that everybody's kind of copying the iPhone, and what we've seen from the iPhone is going to be wider and shorter, and when closed.
Yeah,
But in
yeah.
open, it's going to give you more screen real estate for 16:9 video, whether you hold it in portrait or landscape. So even for your Instagram and your Reels and stuff. That is, I think the end goal here is not so much what the front is doing, but what the inside final aspect ratio is. And I think, is what is the iPad right now? 3:2?
Not sure.
We have to look it up. But you know what I'm talking about. Like that's kind of the sweet spot. You can't go 16:9. That's way too wide.
Right.
16:10 might work, but I think 4:3 or 3:4 is too square. So I think it's 3:2-ish or something like that.
I think it's actually 4:3.
Okay, 4:3. Well, there you go. So good. So that's less square, right? And I think that's kind of why Apple is going. And maybe they're going to 3:2. Who knows? But I think that's also what Oppo and look, they're going to copy. I think this is the rumors are that, in the same way as Samsung did an S25 Edge last year because the Air was coming.
Yeah.
This is, and I don't think it's a bad thing because the market will decide. Eventually, we'll solidify on one format or the other, or maybe both will coexist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. I'm like I said, I'm open to being convinced. I like the taller foldables that we've got. Pixel 10 Pro Fold, I love. The Galaxy Fold is great too, but we'll see.
Yeah, I did like the original form factor of the Pixel. The problem I had with that original Pixel, it felt like a prototype, right? Because it was their first device, and they resolved this. But I could have continued with that aspect ratio and that form factor. I think that they eventually nailed it in terms of like build quality design and not making a prototype. I think they're a little behind now in terms of thickness and stuff, but it's still a solid phone, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold.
Yeah.
Couple of OnePlus items, as I mentioned, the OnePlus 15T we've talked about before. It's essentially the follow-up to the 13T from last year. And then the other news we have, and it's not surprising, but OnePlus Open 2 is canceled again. It looks like they were working on one because last year, there was rumors that they were going to take the Oppo Find N5 and make it into OnePlus Open 2, and that I think it didn't get even that far. Like I don't think internally it got that far because I don't think the OnePlus Open sold super well, but I think there's another factor here at play which makes it even more sense with this second attempt because with the Oppo Find N6 just around the corner, it's going to be coming, I think, for MWC. So we're like, yes, of course, there would be a OnePlus Open 2 potentially on the table. But Pete Lau has really been trying to make Oppo the flagship brand. And you've seen this recently. I didn't put this as a news item, but Realme recently got folded back into Oppo. So Realme was starting to do its own thing, kind of like Vivo.
Right.
And I think they're being pulled back in. And, OnePlus hasn't gotten a foldable since they got pulled back in. I think Pete Lau is very serious about Oppo only getting the foldables and the top flagships.
I thought that wasn't there news like last year, a couple of years ago, that basically OnePlus was going to be the North American Oppo and they were basically just going to do the same thing, but for different markets?
Yes, and that's still true, but I think that direction's changed a little bit now.
Yeah.
Because I think Pete's looking at OnePlus in India is doing better than OnePlus in the US, right? So let's not target the US market as much. Let's just make phones for the US, great. But that's, I think, why we're seeing that 15 and 15R not being quite what we want. Like, in some ways downgraded in cameras and stuff and not as well-rounded because in India, the specs really matter.
Right.
See, so like having a gaming phone in terms of performance, and I put this in air quotes, it is really important to the Indian market. And so India's starting to drive the marketing, and same with Realme. And so Pete Lau's looking at like, well, maybe we were going to make OnePlus the brand for the West, but now we're not. And so I'm not surprised they canceled OnePlus Open 2 again. I was not expecting another OnePlus Open. I hate to say that because I want it. I want it bad. I'd rather carry a OnePlus Open 2 or Open 3 than the Oppo Find N5 and then Find N6 because I want all the US band support and all that stuff, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's given. But it's so close right now that it's not a huge difference. So, yeah.
I think it's a huge bummer. Like I really like the original OnePlus Open at the time was such a great phone.
It was incredible.
The pace of like improvement for foldables right now is pretty quick, and it probably doesn't hold up now. But it was
still
so
holds
good.
Up, actually. Yeah, it's not too bad. Pull it out, you'll see.
Kind of chunky, yeah.
It's a little chunky, but not that much. It's about the same chunky level as the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. So, you know. But here's the thing. The OnePlus 15T, on the other hand, is a phone that is a successor to OnePlus 13T. And if you remember last year, 13T never made it to North America or to the West. I mean, it did. India as the OnePlus 13S and China as OnePlus 13T. This is the flagship, the 13 last year, but scaled down to 6.3-inch screen. So to iPhone 17 size, iPhone 17 Pro size, but with all the goodness. So it's flagship. Right, but they did cut a few corners last year. It didn't have an ultra wide, which is really weird. It had a telephoto, like a good, really good camera system with all Hasselblad and everything, but no ultra wide, which was like, what? And then it also didn't have wireless charging, but everything else about it was super great. And I got to play with it for a week. Spencer hooked me up. So that's 13T last year. 15T is the follow-up to that. But we're hearing that they're putting back some of the things they had removed last year. So again, we're not getting it. India's probably get a 15S version of that. But so I just want to mention it for those of you out there in Asia and India who will get this phone. Stay tuned. It's exciting. The latest details on this are basically, RAM and storage options, which who cares? And we know that's going to be an 8 Elite Gen 5. We know it's going to have at least a 7,000 milliamp hour battery, which is insane on a 6.3-inch phone. But this is where we are. And of course, it's going to have the 1.5K display and the 165 hertz. But I feel like maybe they're going to be 1080p simply because 6.3. I don't know.
So what's the leaks suggest, 1.5K. But so what's the trade-off? It's going to be the cameras again. But like how much worse are the cameras going to be than the standard 15? They're just going to not have an ultra.
I think they're just going to have either they're going to detune the telephoto or drop the ultra wide. Like last year was identical from a main and telephoto perspective. Somehow they decide to drop the ultra, which is really weird, and the wireless charger. But I feel like silicon carbon battery, they can now probably still restore the wireless. Although in the markets they're selling it in, the wireless is not a huge deal. China and India don't really care about wireless charging. So that's also why they might have removed it last time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the technical ability to have the wireless charging is why they would include it or not. I think it would.
No, it's not really expensive and it doesn't really take that much space anymore. But we'll see. No. And speaking of the triad of, Oppo brands, Realme again here has a P4 power device coming soon. And we've been following this because it's insane, because it's one of the phones, because we'll get to another one from Honor in a second, that's shipping soon with a 10,000 milliamp hour battery. And it's not thicker, like it's an 8mm-ish thin phone with a 10,000 milliamp hour battery for certain markets. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, okay, for certain markets. So we're not going to get that in Europe, right? That's why we could if it's dual cell. Remember, the OnePlus 15 is sold in Europe because it's dual cell. 7,000. The limit for Europe, I believe, is 5,180 per cell. That's per cell. So if you have two cells, that in the case of the OnePlus, 15, it's 7,300 divided by 2. So it's like, 3,650 each, right? So there you go. So if they do 5,000 each, they still pass Europe. Now, I don't think the P4 is coming. I think this is a China, India kind of device. Right.
And I don't know if they're gearing this to be like a gaming phone, which is quite what I could see them do. Judging from the graphics here of a first-person shooter running 144 hertz, 1.5K display, I think they're aiming for kind of like a gaming-centric device, but at the mid-range, right, in terms of price and specs. Probably has some kind of Dimensity or 7 series Snapdragon chip. Anyway,
it's funny that one of the teaser images here has like one charge equals 1.5 days of use, which that seems really low for a phone with a 10,000 milliamp hour battery.
What if they're again aiming this for gaming? So 1.5 days of gaming use.
Or a week of not gaming use.
Look, I'm gonna be getting one. I'm gonna request one because I have to get the first phone with 10,000 milliamp hour battery at some point. Here's the thing: like they did a prototype 6 months ago. I think it was like April, March last year, they showed a prototype of a phone with a 10,000 milliamp hour battery that was and so we knew it was coming. It was only a matter of time. And we knew Honor, who's been the main innovator and the main driver of silicon carbon, would do this. So now we also have this Honor phone, which, is called the Honor Power 2. Like last year's Honor Power had, I think, an 8,000 or 9,000 milliamp hour battery. And this year we're at 10,080 milliamp hour with a Dimensity 8500 Elite chipset, which is a newer chipset from MediaTek. 8mm thick. And it looks like an iPhone 17 Pro, right?
Yeah. Even in orange. I like the idea of the reverse wired charging, though, because it's like at that point, the 10,000 milliamp, it's basically a power bank with a screen on it, right? Like,
I know, a 27 watt reverse wired charging.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, and it's got a metal frame. Do you see how his antenna band? So this is going to look like an iPhone. This is going to be great.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I'm super curious about like how long in normal use is 10,000 milliamp hours going to last.
Especially with that chipset. It'll be really efficient.
Yeah.
So, yeah, stay tuned for that. I don't get the Honor phones. This is China only right now. We're not sure if it's coming to the rest of the world, but I think it's very interesting to keep our, finger on the pulse. I feel like I failed you all because my audience, because I've been saying for all of 2025 that within 2 to 3 years, we'd see 10,000 milliamp hour batteries on phones, but now it was less than that. So I didn't fail you really, but I did because it's happening way faster than I expected.
True, within 2 to 3 years.
I thought this was going to be a 2027 thing, and it's 2026 thing. So where are we going to be in 5 years? Are you going to be at like 15,000? Like, those old Uli phones that are like an inch thick that have like 20,000 milliamp hours? I think we're going to get to that in an 8mm thin package if it keeps going.
At what point do they stop?
Nah.
Never? Maybe never. For batteries, I guess.
I think there's going to be a point where the charging speed can't keep up. Even at 120 watt, it's going to take 3 hours to charge the battery. So
yeah, it's weird to think because like for displays, I feel like displays on phones have gotten so good. Like, what's the only thing they could possibly do better is get brighter, I guess. But they're so bright already. They go all the way to 1 nit to however many thousands of tens of thousands of nits. Like, refresh rates, like variable refresh rates, the colors are great. Like, how much better do displays need to get? And that's maybe where we're headed for batteries as well. But maybe
I think we're seeing a very clear trajectory for mid-range phones right now being 1.5K LTPS with 144, 165 hertz. That's what's coming out of China.
Yeah,
almost
definitely for mid-range. Yeah.
But that's interesting because, I really didn't think we needed more than 1080p, 120 hertz. I would have thought that LTPO would come in at 120 hertz, 1080p for mid-range. But what we're seeing is the resolution and the refresh rate going up and the base refresh rate not going down below 30 hertz because of LTPS.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting choice. But I think when you have 7,000 milliamp hour to play with and a mid-range chipset, you don't have to worry too much about the efficiency of the display anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And LTPO is significantly more expensive still than LTPS. Like if you look at the bombs, it's quite a bit bill of material. It's quite a bit of a difference. So anyway, speaking of Honor, there is you just reviewed the Magic 8 Pro, but there's a Magic 8 Pro Air coming. Turns out this has been teased now officially, more or less, and that looks like basically Honor is making an iPhone Air equivalent. It's not quite as thin as 6.1 millimeter. We're not at 5.5 ish, but it does have triple rear cameras, and it does have a very similar design.
Yeah,
and even similar colors. Look at the colors, like other than the orange, which is a pro color for Apple, the other three are almost like 17 regular, the purple, right? And the other two lilac are essentially colors that the Air comes in. Wow. God, China. Wow.
I think it's so funny that everyone's doing the Air, and then at the same time, we keep getting the reports about how poorly the Air has sold. Like you said, I really like the Air, and I'm considering moving from the Pro Max to the Air for a while and seeing how that goes. But, if Apple isn't selling it, how many are Samsung and Honor going to sell?
Exactly.
I don't know.
I agree. But at the same time, China might be into it, but China might be into like, hey, we need real cameras and we need a silicon carbon battery that'll last us 2 days, okay?
Yeah.
And
but
so
I think, There are plenty of Apple users in China too.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, they see their friend with an Air and they're like, haha, one-upped you with the Honor or the Huawei.
That's the thing, right? I don't know if they do see their friend with an Air.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think that there's in the same way as the iPhone mini was a niche, I think the Air is going to become a niche. And I think that Apple's going to persevere for 2-3 generations, and then they're going to decide to drop it or not. Like, I don't see Apple dropping it right away. They're very much more long-term in that. No.
They've been planning the Air 2 for 3 years already,
100%. Yeah. So a few more items to wrap things up. Redmi Note 15 series is now available in Europe. I'm not going to say more than that, really. This phone is being out in India already, China already. The reason I bring this phone up every year, and everybody asks me, like, what's the big deal with the phone that it spans from a 4G non-Pro version? It's already a mid-range Pro phone line to start with. And so now you're talking about, like, starting in the 4G non-Pro $200 range all the way to a $450 Pro 5G version. What's the deal? The deal is it's the phone that Redmi, aka Xiaomi, makes that is 80% of a flagship experience for half the price. Every time I get a Note, some number in my hands from Redmi, especially the Pro and Pro Plus, I'm always blown away by the display, the battery life, the performance, the camera system. Everything on it is solid. And I'm like, that makes me rethink why I use a flagship every day.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who know, if you know, you know, and you're going to be buying a Note 15 Pro Plus or Pro or whatever, 5G or 4G if you don't care about 5G.
So how much is it?
You'll be happy. How much?
Yeah.
Prices vary from like $200 for the base Note 15 4G to like $450 or so for the Pro Plus 5G version, which has like a telephoto and the whole 9-yard. It's pretty cool.
And if you were deciding between that, the 450 version, and the Realme that we were talking about before,
I would pick the Realme because I like the software on Realme better than the software on Xiaomi. Okay. That's about the only difference. I think Xiaomi, it's still more, I think it's probably more well-rounded. Like, the cameras are not quite as extreme as the Realme, but the processor is probably slightly better. You get 5 choices here of phones. There's a Pro, like a regular 4G, a Pro 4G, a regular 5G, a Pro 5G, and a Pro Plus 5G. So, and they're all slightly different. And
the highest end has the 7S Gen 4.
Yeah, exactly. And so very similar. They're absolutely competitors. Yeah, you're right about that. So yeah, stay tuned for that. If I can get a device, I've requested a Pro Plus, so let's see if it comes. Finally, Redmagic 11 Air has leaked. Now, last year they made a Redmagic 10 Air, and the only difference between the 10 Air and the regular Redmagic 10 Pro at the time was that the 10 Air didn't have the fan.
Right.
And you can do some pretty clever things with vapor chambers and some good thermal management. And if you're a hardcore gamer, but you still want something thinner, which is the whole point of this Air nomenclature. By the way, I want to give Redmagic some credit that the Air brand for them came out way before Apple's. Okay, so they decided to do a thinner gaming phone and drop the fan for the 10 Air last year, early on. I think it came out even like late 2024. And so now we have a successor, but the successor does have a fan. It doesn't have the liquid cooling of the 11 Pro that I'm reviewing right now, which is a proper liquid insane liquid cooling loop with a piezo pump in there. Anyway, so I think this is cool for those of you who want a thinner, lighter, and maybe you're not quite as core about gaming. You're still serious about gaming. You don't need the extreme battery life and the extreme cooling. You still get a fan. Nice. But when the fan.
When we talk about the thinner of these phones, it's not iPhone Air. It's still almost 8 millimeters thick. So it's thinner than the other ones that have
which is almost
the
like
big
9
fans and
point
like the huge
millimeter,
batteries and so yeah.
It's not like a huge difference. So yeah, stay tuned for that. We'll find out more. Right now, I'm sure it's coming to China first on January 20th. And then MediaTek dropped a couple of new chips. Again, I don't know much about those. I'm just going to put down links so that those of you who care and follow will check it out. There's a 9500S, which seems to like slightly tuned, more affordable version, kind of like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 is to the 8 Elite Gen 5. they've done that last year with a 9400 as well. And then there's an 8500, a base 8500 as well. And, MediaTek has been a sponsor of the podcast. I really appreciate them. And phones with MediaTek chips are underrated. And like my Oppo Find X9 Pro with a Dimensity 9500 is a tremendous phone. And I really think that we should give them a little more credit and attention. And I'm not saying that because they're a sponsor. I'm just saying that really because I feel that the product is solid.
I agree.
So, yeah. All right. Let's wrap up. Christian, tell folks where they can find you on the internet, where your social media lives, where you write. I know it's going to be a long list, but
yeah, no, I'm around. Just look for Christian DeLuper. I'm on social media. I need to post more often, but just search my name and I should pop up. Writing for BGR and Tom's Guide, others as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you Google Christian's name, you will find a ton of pubs. And Muckrack, which kind of summarizes a lot of the writings we do as journalists, is actually a pretty good source to keep track of your stuff because I have a hard time sometimes finding the latest. And so if you want to follow Christian on social, that'd be great. And read his stuff, really solid reviews. Also, lots of really great audio reviews. Me and Christian really nerd out about audio quite a bit when we're in person and stuff. It's great. Folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. That's my handle pretty much everywhere except on TikTok. Yeah, TikTok is TNKGRL69, which is my year of birth. Don't get your mind out of the gutter, people. I just thought it'd be funny to do that because people are like, huh? Anyway, I couldn't get my handle, so I'm not very active on TikTok, but I'm there. Mostly I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. But I'm still on all the other platforms. So please chat with me and Christian about this podcast if you have questions. And you know where the podcast lives. mobiletechpodcast.com is URL. You can subscribe there. But we're on all the major platforms. Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, YouTube Music. Subscribe to the podcast, the audio version. I'd appreciate it. And then rate and review the podcast if you can in your app. That'd be cool. There is a YouTube channel as well with some hands-ons, some unboxing, some first impressions. Like I just did a video at CS on the Trifold from Samsung. My first impression, my hands-on, check that out. YouTube.com/MobileTechPodcast, obviously. So you know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. And as I mentioned, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. If you want to support me, that's where to go. There is a video version of this podcast every week, a day in advance for $5 a month. So there you go. If you consider supporting me, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/Tanker, like my handle on social media. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Infineon. Infineon is a global semiconductor leader in automotive, power systems, and IoT, and is committed to driving decarbonization and digitalization together with its ecosystem partners. And Christian, thanks so much for being my guest. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me. Good time.
Absolutely. We'll have to get you on the show at some point again. Maybe we can do it, when we're traveling somewhere.
Probably be in MWC this year, though. So.
Oh, good. So I'm planning to be there as well. So I'll see you there. And folks, stay tuned. We'll have another show next week. Until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye.